Hi, welcome back to Cubs and Culture for January 6, 2018, continuing our exploration of The Greatest Showman, where I'm using La La Land for the image at the moment because the lyricists of La La Land are also the lyricists of The Greatest Showman. So if you like one, you probably will like the other, at least as far as the music is concerned. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is, in general, this movie has had very mixed reviews. It has like 53% on the tomato meter. I believe it's one of the worst one of the worst received films I have ever truly liked. It very well might be my favorite film of the year. The major complaint against it is it's not very accurate to P.T. Barnum's life, and it's very that it trades music for complexity or complexity for the music or some other stuff. However you want to put the point, that it sacrifices the complexity of the real P.T. Barnum for sort of the entertainment of The Greatest Showman. As will become very clear, I think this reaction is kind of the point, actually, but returning to the reaction, there absolutely is another film that's possible for P.T. Barnum's life that's a lot more highbrow or intellectual, where you get into sort of the darker aspects of P.T. Barnum's life. For example, he owned a slave, and he used to tour this real old black woman around and claiming that she was George Washington's nurse or maid. Of course, you have sort of the question about him exploiting people with disabilities. Tom Thumb, for example, actually when he started with P.T. Barnum, he was 6 years old. He had a rocky relationship with his family. The movie, The Greatest Showman, all sort of plasters this over and either completely ignores it or it's barely even hinted at. And the reason for this, I think, is there's two different quotes that P.T. Barnum's famous for saying, though he probably actually didn't say either of them. It is P.T. Barnum. Of course, the most famous one is, there's a sucker born every minute or every day, and then there's sort of, the noblest art is bringing joy to people. Now, The Greatest Showman ends on the second one. They end with the quote, "The noblest art known to man is the ability to bring joy to people." P.T. Barnum. And in some ways, that's sort of the point, and I think there is, when you make a P.T. Barnum movie, you have to decide what you want to focus on. The accuracy towards the P.T. Barnum's life, or accuracy towards P.T. Barnum's perspective on life. And I think, in a lot of ways, The Greatest Showman decided to focus on his perspective on life. Okay, and so towards that end, on the sort of the first layer of the film, it's a well-structured, rags-to-riches story about a guy who's desperate for societal approval and wealth, getting rich because he's a great entertainer, he has a sense for what people want, knows how to work the press, etc., etc., etc. It's almost as if Black and Condon looked at The Greatest Show on Earth, that awful 1950s film, and said, hey, people really would like to watch the acts and we don't need all this sort of filler, and they wrote this screenplay where it's sort of a very bare bones, in a good way, economically, story of a rag to riches, where the central character for is this desire to be respected within the community, be respected by the snobs or upper class. It's fun, it's quick, it moves along, it's deeply efficient in its way in which it's shot. The music is earwormy. I still have The Other Side stuck in my head. Okay? So, yeah, there's another film that might have been more deeper or more complex or have a greater sense of irony, or it would certainly would have been darker if you were more accurate to P.T. Barnum's life. But I think that would be robbing the film of being accurate to P.T. Barnum's perspective. And I think the movie decided to focus more on bringing joy to people. And in that sense, it's actually a really good portrayal of P.T. Barnum. Okay, so that's sort of the first layer of the movie. A light operetta or light rock musical, quick, fun, fast. All the performances are absolutely delightful. My favorite song is The Other Side, which I'll actually have a part about. Zac Efron, great in it. Hugh Jackman, always a great song and dance band. Well put together, slick film, professional musical. So that's it for part one. That's sort of the most basic reading of the film. Okay, let me pause there and come back for part three.